Okay, so today we're going to start talking about chapter 3 a little bit. We will not go over the test until Friday, although I will say some things about the test. Yeah, so that's what we'll start with. Yeah, let me start by saying some things about the test. Look, from my point of view, the test went the way it always does. Had a bunch of A's, had some middle grades, had some really bad grades. If you were not happy with your grade, you should know this happens usually to about a quarter to a third of the students in this class, because this class feels easier than it is until you do the first exam, which is what I've been trying to warn you about from day one. If you want to get help, my first suggestion is sign up for the student tutoring. However, I want to warn you, you only get 4 sessions with that. Do not waste the sessions focusing on exam 2. Because exam 2, frankly, is easier than the other exams. So I would use it to go over and learn what you didn't learn for exam 1 and for exam 3 and 4. And I will give you this lifeline, and I want you to understand what this offer is. For anyone who does better on the final exam than they did on exam 1, I will substitute the grade for the final exam also on exam 1. Everyone understand what I'm offering? So if you do better on the final exam, it will basically count double. Now, I will warn you, the final exam is hard because it includes stuff from exam 1 and stuff from the entire semester. So, just because, I've offered that, don't assume, oh, I can get a B on the final exam despite the fact that I got a 44 on the exam 1, and, my grade will be a B for the course. Don't assume that. That is, frankly, statistically extraordinarily unlikely. How do I know that? Because I have a large sample size of hundreds of students who've taken this class. But look, we'll go over the exam on Friday. And again, there's time to improve. Exam 2 tests a different kind of skill than exams 1, 3, and 4. So most people do better on it. Hint, it is a little less like a math and a lot more like the humanities stuff that everybody likes so much. Frankly, the easier sorts of grades. See, what else should I say? Yeah, I think I'll leave it with that. But look, work hard. And if after exam 2, you don't like where you stand for the class, I will encourage certain people to withdraw. Because if you do poorly on both exams 1 and 2, you're not going to like your grade in this class. So we'll talk about that. But you've got some time, and as I've said, people tend to do quite well on exam 2 compared to exam 1. But then on exams 3 and 4, the grades revert very similar. They correlate very closely with the exam 1 grades. All right, why is it showing me this? There we go. And I'm sure the situation is made all the more complicated by people being in isolation with COVID or quarantine. That's not good. That's not a good situation. Let's find, where's the session number? There it is. Okay, so for anyone using the app, today's session number is 288489. So what we're going to talk about today is about use of language, and that is what chapter 3 focuses upon. Language is a deeply philosophical topic, and the way the resultant position you have on various issues in our culture often is determined by your starting definitions. This is an observation that goes all the way back to Socrates and the ancient Greeks. Let's see, what else should I say about that? So for example, virtually every election in our culture is in part an argument about what the proper definition of the word justice is. Because both sides will claim the word and both sides will use it in various ways. There's divergent ways. Another important word in our political discourse is the word equality. People are trying to change the meaning of the word. Maybe it should be changed, maybe it shouldn't, but it's important for you to know that a lot of what our political discourse is about what the definition of that word ought to mean. And if you don't understand that, then you don't even understand what the debates are about. And that's a lot of what happens in our culture, because you get people yelling these important words at each other, and they're not listening to each other or the discourse closely enough to even understand what the disagreement's even about, which frankly is a very discouraging thing. All right, so let's start with something simple. Positive, neutral, and negative terms. There are ways to say the same thing, to describe the same event, that intentionally or unintentionally conceptualizes those things in a more negative way, in a more positive way, or in a neutral way. So back in the Stone Age, in the early 1990s, I used to play this video game. It was something like Risk. It was, a conquer the world sort of game. And one of the fun things about it is whenever you conquered a country, you know what it would say? It would say, "Sir, we have liberated France or whatever country you just conquered. And it would use the word liberate anytime you conquered a country. When the other side conquered a country, it would say, sir, I am sorry to report the evil enemy has annexed and captured, subverted, it is captured France or whatever country that the other side captured. And the point is it's describing fundamentally the same activity, one with very positive language, the other using very negative and loaded language. And frankly, this is about everything in our culture. In our culture, the news media uses loaded terms. When they like something, they use positive terms. When they don't like it, they use negative terms. And if you agree, if you agree with their evaluations, you often don't even notice this. So the danger of using the loaded terms is that people no longer trust you if they notice that you're consistently conceptualizing things in the opposite way. So, for example, forgive me, I have to use this example. A huge portion of our country did not believe the news media on anything it said about Donald Trump. And there's a pretty obvious reason to me why. The news media consistently used overly negative terms to describe him no matter what he did. Now, we can leave it to a side question whether or not that was the proper reaction for them to have. But by using those terms in its report, it alienated people who weren't already convinced. My favorite example of this, you can Google this later if you're curious. I saw an article on CNN and several other sources 4 years ago that reported on Donald Trump's inauguration cake. You know, inauguration cake, every new president gets this super fancy cake that makes your wedding cake look like dirt. I mean, super cool. And these stories are usually very, they're puff pieces. They're like, it's 8 tiers and has chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry and all these sorts of things. Well, the CNN's take on Donald Trump's inauguration cake was this. Did Donald Trump plagiarize his inauguration cake? This is a real story. This was a real headline. Now, what do you do? Now, if you already hate Donald Trump, what do? You say, yeah, that bastard. But what if you're either in the middle or you kind of like Donald Trump? What do? You say, see, I can't trust CNN about anything. They hate Donald Trump so much, I can't even say anything nice about his cake. And then you wonder why our culture is so divided. So I say this to you, not because I like or don't like Donald Trump, in part because I do despise the media on all sides, because I think they're terrible and irresponsible. But I want you to be aware there's a lot at stake in this discussion. So be aware of the terms you use. So here's just a starting point. We should attempt to find terms and definitions that do not bias the conversation in some way. So here's 3 ways of describing the same trait. It has been said, I am firm, you are obstinate, and he is pig-headed. Well, when I have the trait, and these are all 3 things describe the same trait. When I have it, it's a good thing, it's a virtue. I am steadfast, enduring, and trustworthy. When you have it, well, I don't like you as much as I like me, so you're being obstinate. And then if it's someone I really don't like, they're pig-headed. So it's important to watch the tone of our language and the connotations of our language. One of the things that is different about this topic is that I can give you some principles on how to identify tone, but it's tricky. And unlike with translations, I can't just give you a list of things that look like this are positive and things that look like this are negative. It's a lot more of an art than a science or math. Which is one of the reasons exam 2 turns out to be easier, because science and maths are harder. Here, let's talk about one. First term, a cop. Now, I always thought cop was the way you just referred to a police officer. But it turns out that they don't like that term very much. And there's a history behind that term. That is a lower class way, a slang way of referring to a police officer, which refers to them in light of the copper badge that they classically had like 100 years ago. And they didn't like it, and the police don't like being referred to that way. So if you want to, so cop is sort of subtly dehumanizing. Let me ask, why is it dehumanizing to call a police officer a cop? Right, you're taking away their humanity. You're shifting away from their personhood to just this piece of metal that's associated with them, and therefore that's that they find this, upon reflection, not unreasonably to be dehumanizing and negative. Now, the neutral terms are terms that are sort of minimally descriptive. So when you call somebody their job title, that is minimally descriptive. That who are they? They're a police officer. They're law enforcement, something like that. Now there is an overly complimentary thing you're supposed to call police officers. You ever hear this one? Newport News' finest. The finest is what you're supposed to refer to them if you're trying to be complimentary. That being said, if you ever get pulled over by them, and I won't tell you how I know this, I strongly recommend you do not call them Newport News' finest, because you will sound sarcastic and they will not like you. They will react badly. Also, firefighters. Newport News' bravest. That's what you're supposed to call the firefighters. Again, I don't know who comes up with these. Probably some firefighter or police officer a century ago. But yeah, those are competing ways to conceive terms, competing ways to conceive of concepts. All right. So the best way to proceed here is by example. Here, let's do another one. Filthy rich. Now, filthy is, this has negative connotations. Why? Well, do we like things that are filthy? Generally not. So there are other ways to refer to people who are rich. Probably the most neutral way is to refer to them, sort of descriptively. That's a millionaire. How do you know? Because he has $1 million. Again, it's minimally descriptive. Or maybe someone who is upper class. Or if you want to be positive, you find some nice nuance about this person who's filthy rich. They're a philanthropist. You focus on what they do with their money or how they earned their money. They're an entrepreneur or a celebrity. Again, and these aren't, they're describing the same thing, but they're not completely the same concept. So again, so one tool that I encourage people is when they're trying to figure out where a term falls on the positive, negative, or neutral sort of spectrum, it often helps to try to brainstorm other terms, other words for the same concept, and see, where you can locate it in the spectrum. Now, that being said, don't be fooled just because you can come up with one other term that's negative. That doesn't mean the term you're considering is not negative. Or to say it differently, just because the word tyrant is bad doesn't mean the word dictator isn't also bad. So sometimes there are multiple terms that could fall into each category. All right, so let's do this together, trial and error, using the apps and your clicker technology. And we'll talk about these one at a time. Now, this one's pretty easy. Heroic. Well, this is a positive term. How do we know it's a positive term? Well, one thing that has the word hero in it. Anything else? It can be used as a compliment. Good, good. Anything else? Good, good, yeah. I mean, it didn't say what the person did, and it just described it with this implicitly positive commentary. So here's another test. Would you like to be called the word up there? If you like it, it's probably positive. If you wouldn't like it, it's probably negative. I mean, again, that's not, again, this is less of a math or science and more of an art, but again, that's a pretty good indicator. And again, note, you can always, sort of flip the script. So Batman is a hero because he took out a mafia boss all by himself. What if we don't like what Batman did? How would we describe it? What word would we use? Maybe, or maybe, so maybe we'd say villain kills 3 in gang violence. Or maybe we would say vigilante. So yeah, I mean, again, there are multiple ways to describe the same thing. An extremist. Good. All right, we all agree extremist is bad. Why? What's bad about extremists? How do we know? Good, good. So when we call somebody extremist, what we're saying is they're not like us. They're other. They go too far. Now, there are probably some things that it'd be really good to be extremist on, right? You know, that person is extremely generous. That extremist, that best. I mean, again, extremist still has that same tone, but if you think about it, there's some things it's probably good to be extreme on. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a bodybuilding extremist. You know, it's probably good to be healthy and strong. I mean, yes, he goes way, way farther than the norm. But, you know, so in a certain sense, to be extreme isn't always bad, but the word extremist has this negative connotation. What would you call somebody who's an extremist if you like what they did? An activist, good, good. Or, I mean, that activist is probably positive. What else would we call an extremist if you like what they did? Passionate. Yeah, they're so passionate about what they believe. They stormed the Capitol. All right, an elderly gentleman. Good. Yeah, this one, frankly, this one I really shouldn't ask you on the test because this one's a little vague, but I think you guys kind of caught the nuance there. It is a neutral to positive term. What is positive about this term? Good. Gentleman isn't just about being, this isn't just about being old. When you call somebody a gentleman, what are you implying? They're polite. It has this sort of upper class connotation. They're refined. What if I wanted to call this guy something neutral? What would I call him? Maybe old man. Old man, to me, just the word old sounds a little negative. What if I wanted to be even more neutral than that? Mature? I don't know. I think maturity, I think we like maturity. I think that is positive nuance. Oh, I think senior citizen is very positive. I mean, to call somebody a citizen, especially, with all the current debates, I mean, to emphasize our commonality. Here's what, if I wanted to call someone who's old something neutral, I would describe them by their age. That's a 70-year-old guy. That's neutral. Elderly gentleman, that's positive. Senior citizen, positive. What if I want to call them something negative? Decrepit, yeah, okay, we can talk about the state of their body. What else? Senile, yeah, whether or not that's true. Or we can just call them something like an old bastard. I mean, right? Oh, all right, I gave this one away. Oops. I didn't realize that was the next one. It is my favorite. Well, because it's a crass word that I can get away with saying regularly. Nobody thinks badly of it. In fact, most people think I'm joking, which I am in part. Yeah, so why is this a negative word? I mean, yes, it is a negative word, but why is calling someone a bastard a negative word? Okay, well, does anyone know what the word bastard actually refers to historically? It goes back to something even further than that. The word bastard refers to a male dog. That's what it refers to. So when we call people born out of wedlock bastards, it's comparing them to, sort of the uncivilized actions of non-human animals. Anything that compares humans to non-human animals tends to be degrading. And yeah, sure, emphasizing, the out of wedlock stuff, that's not great either. So what do we call somebody if they're born out of wedlock and we want to call them something neutral? I don't know. Would you like to be called illegitimate? I'm going to say that's still negative. Probably better than bastard, but that's still negative. Surprise. Well, you can have surprises, sort of in wedlock as well. So, all right, well, that's what my parents were hippies. So, yeah, if you want to have that positive connotation, you would say love child, because that means all we need is our love. We don't need some stupid piece of paper to tell us our love is legitimate and that our children are legitimate. What if we want to get neutral? Notice we still haven't hit something that I think is truly neutral. Your child? Yeah, although if you want to specifically specify child not born within a marriage, you'd have to say something like a child in a single parent household or something like that. Again, minimally descriptive tends to be neutral. Bologna. And by the way, bologna here is not a lunch meat. When you call something someone says bologna, is that positive, negative, or neutral? Yeah, this is negative. Now, sometimes if I don't give some clarification, I get like a third of the students will say it's positive, and what they mean is they like eating bologna sandwiches. But the point here is when you call what somebody says bologna, what are we saying? You're saying, well, BS would be the harsher version of baloney. We're saying it's untrue. Why does, how does untrue get associated with baloney? I mean, again, think about the etymology here a little bit. What does baloney have to do with being untrue? That's right. That's right. It's like this fake meat made out of like scraps and like chicken nails and gizzards and stuff like this. So it's like this fake meat. I mean, wouldn't it be funny? I mean, you could call somebody says something untrue, roast beef. I mean, that's still. I mean, again, how did baloney get associated with falseness? But yeah, it's this idea that it's fake. A backward country. Yeah, that's pretty negative. What's negative about a backward country? Yeah, basically the idea is we do it the right way, you do it the different or opposite, therefore you're wrong, you're backwards. Never occurs. Maybe we're the backwards ones. Maybe we're the ones being held to the earth upside down by an invisible force called gravity, and they're the ones standing right side up. What should we call such a country if we want it to be neutral or positive? Okay, I mean, I think developing is better. I still think that's negative. Why would I say developing is negative? Yeah, they're not there yet. Someday they'll get where we are. They're working towards it. Go guys, we're rooting for you, but you're still not there. So yeah, that's still kind of negative. What else might we call a backward country? We could just say foreign. I mean, foreign's kind of neutral-ish. What else? What we might try to do? A unique culture, a rustic culture, a tribal culture. There's other ways we could try to say it if it's more an exotic culture. Backwards, if you don't like it, exotic if you do like it, and maybe just foreign if you're not sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe if we're from just like economics, maybe we could say something about the GNP or something to be just economically descriptive. Authoritarian. Well, if authoritarian means sort of a authoritative, overly assertive leader, and I think this means negative, though I think you could make a case that it's neutral if that's just how you're describing. Now, if you like what they're doing, maybe you like an authoritarian. We need strong leadership in tough times. That's kind of the positive spin. So what do you call the authoritarian leader if you're trying to be more neutral or positive? Yeah, I mean, maybe. Supreme ruler. I mean, maybe not in our culture. I mean, I've never heard that term used non-sarcastically. But yeah, I mean, I think yes. Powerful, assertive, strong, something like that. Yeah, we just say president or a president who initiates a lot. He has lots of ideas, lots of policies, a record number of executive orders in the first week. He's record breaking. It's not authoritative. And again, it's the sort of thing, if you like the policies, you compliment them. If you don't like them, they're the worst thing ever. A do-gooder. Excellent. Yeah, I guess the question is, do you interpret the term sort of straightforwardly, or do you interpret it as sort of an insult? I mean, so do we like people who do good? I think so, right? On the other hand, when you call someone a do-gooder, usually what it means is you think that they think of themselves as sort of interfering and doing things they ought not do. I always think of do-gooder as what the villain says at the end of every episode of Scooby-Doo when they've been captured. I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you annoying do-gooder kids and that annoying talking dog. So again, this is one I won't ask you on the test, but it's interesting whether or not you think it's good depends on whether you sort of take it sort of straight or whether you think of it as kind of an insulting jab. Interesting, nobody thought it was neutral. A hair splitter. Yeah, hair splitter's negative. Why? What are we talking about here? What's bad? Why is it bad to be a hair splitter? Nobody likes the term, but nobody knows why we don't like the term. Okay. Good. Yeah, this is someone that's sort of overly attentive to detail in like a not productive way. Philosophers are often accused of being hair splitters. I'm aware of this insult. What do we call this person if you want to be sort of neutral or positive? Okay. I mean, I think perfectionism isn't really a healthy thing, but yeah, I mean that's certainly better than hair splitter. Meticulous, that sounds like a compliment. Detail oriented, yeah, that sounds neutral to positive. So again, same trait. If you don't like them, they're hair splitters. If you do like them, they're detail oriented. An egghead. I'm just going to push past this. Egghead isn't a good thing. It's an insult because we're comparing a human to an egg. A bizarre idea. Yeah, bizarre ideas calling something bizarre is negative. What do you call it if you want to be neutral or positive? I don't know, mine still has this sort of negative. Innovative. Yeah, innovative. That's definitely positive. How about something neutral? Unusual. I mean, unusual. Yeah. What else might you call it? Interesting. Yeah. Isn't interesting like the best vague word to say when you're not sure how to react? Interesting. And as a philosopher, I can get away with that all day long. Different. Yeah, different. That's right. Or you can call it creative. Or yeah. So it's all again same concept. Someone like Gensler would probably say this is a negative term. Anyone know the history of the word kid? Where does the word kid come from? Yeah, I believe it's a baby goat. So if a child is annoying, like a barnyard animal, you know, historically, you call them a kid, or it has this sort of colloquial dismissiveness. Oh, they're just a kid. So I won't ask you this one because I know this is a common word that we use, to describe a child. But again, somebody like Gensler would probably insist it's actually a negative term because of the history behind the term. So sometimes these terms just go mainstream, and we lose touch with the history of it. Booze. All right, now keep in mind, the question here isn't do you like booze / alcohol? The question is using the word booze to describe an alcoholic beverage. Is that negative, positive, or neutral? Yes.
Could we also look at it in the way that maybe the words have changed connotation over time?
Hmm.
Maybe they're around, so maybe booze could refer to instead of like, liquor, like hard liquor, it could refer to like beer.
Yeah, okay.
It wouldn't be like super negative.
But still, that's still not a complimentary, refined way to refer to beer. If I want to refer to beer, oh, you got a craft brew. You're gonna share it with me.
That would be a positive.
What?
Saying it's a craft brew.
Yeah, that would be positive. That's right.
I'm saying more,
You think booze is neutral?
it could be.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. A lot of it depends on context and connotation. But in general, booze is, as 87% realized, this is not the most complimentary way to refer to somebody's alcoholic drink. If you wanna call it something neutral, you call it its name: wine, beer, wine cooler. If you want to call it something positive, what do we call alcohol if we want to call it something positive? I already said craft brew, but what else do we call it? An elixir. Okay. What else? A cocktail. That sounds upper class when you call it a cocktail. What else?
Artisan.
Artisan. Okay. Liquid courage. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we call it an adult beverage. Emphasize our maturity in drinking it. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it boils down to context. I once had a part-time job selling wine. I was very good at it. It turns out that all you need to do is use long, fancy sounding words to describe it. You say things like, can you taste the coffee texture to the wine? And people who have no idea what you're talking about will say, oh yeah, I do. It has a smooth finish, velvety.
Both my parents work at a winery, and they're at a wine club and make wine, so they all have that terminology.
I mean, and the funny thing is, I mean, the terms do mean something. But yeah, most people have no idea. You actually have to put some work in. I discovered one of the best things I learned from that experience is that a good $20 wine tastes just as good as a $100 wine. I mean, you don't waste money on alcohol. Not worth it. All right, a gay. Yeah, I'm going to say referring to someone strictly by their sexuality in this way is probably not complimentary. I mean, there might be some way to use it that isn't negative, but yeah, that's probably not the way we should be referring to people. Abnormal. Actually, you know what? I see we only have a couple minutes left. Are there any in particular that we should just sort of jump ahead to? And are there any that you're curious about or that you want to discuss? Got 3 or 4 minutes. Yes. And what's number 19? Number 19. Oh, abandoning me. Yeah, abandoning me is probably a bad thing. You know, I mean, as opposed to, this is kind of like when you break up and you say, look, it's over. Oh, you're abandoning me, you bastard. I mean, it's a way of implying that you're doing something horrible when maybe you're really not. What's another one up here that maybe we should, worth talking about? Yes. 24, a busybody. Yeah, this is the 3rd edition of the book, and I'm surprised Gensler is still using some of these words. I mean, have you ever used the word busybody? Yeah, this is like from the 60s or something. A busybody is somebody who keeps themselves busy by interfering with other people's business. So, if you watch like the old 60s sitcoms like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie, the busybody is the neighbor that's always kind of snooping and wants to, they're the ones that's going to find out the secrets. But, it's kind of funny. You think busy is a positive word, but it's not in this context. Yes? Which one? Curious. Yeah, good. Yeah, curious or engaged. Somebody with a community consciousness. That's what happens when you get the government to spy on each other. The government gets you to spy on each other for them. All right, well, I think that's probably enough for today. Look, we'll talk about the test a little bit on Friday. Don't despair if you didn't like the way that you did, but take corrective action. Here's the number one thing I think a lot of people need to do. When we go over the exercises, I've noticed certain people aren't taking notes properly. The point of going over the exercises isn't just for you to correct the word or the answer. The point is for you to write down what you did wrong and to write down how to get it right next time. That's the proper way to use the exercise time. If you're just writing down the correct answer, you're not getting what you should out of that conversation. That make sense? All right, thank you very much. Good luck. Have a happy Wednesday. Hey. Yes. Yeah, just send me an email. That way I have record of it. No, don't worry about it. You ask me next time. See you then. Thank you.